say fashion photography is a little bit more than showing off the clothes. It's more like playing with the colors, the texture, and especially if you're a designer, you're working with a model or an artist, it's really about coming together all in one and showcasing your best collection. I really think that's what fashion photography is. It's the different collections that you see, whether it be for the runway or for the designer themselves or just for your own portfolio.
Welcome to Get the Picture podcast. On this episode of Get the Picture, I'm excited to welcome Jolanta Young, a Minnesota-based fashion photographer, creative director, and artist whose beginnings are as rooted as the stories she brings into focus.
Thank you so much, Brad, for having me on Get the Picture podcast today. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have this conversation. We've worked together in weddings and in fashion shoots and other things, and it's great to sit down and actually talk about what we're doing instead of just doing it and hear more of your thoughts on the world, especially of fashion photography.
Absolutely.
So why don't we just jump right into starting with the big picture? How would you define fashion photography, especially for a complete beginner? What's its primary goal? Is it just about showing clothes, or how would you define it?
I'd say fashion photography is a little bit more than that. I think it's a little bit of more than showing off the clothes. It's more like playing with the colors, the texture, and especially if you're a designer, you're working with a model or an artist, it's really about coming together all in one and showcasing your best collection. I really think that's what fashion photography is. It's the different collections that you see, whether it be for the runway or for the designer themselves or just for your own portfolio.
What are the main genres or types of fashion photography? Like, I've heard of editorial, commercial, there's others that I'm not as familiar with. Can you talk about what those are and how they differ in purpose and style?
Yeah, so there's editorial, as you mentioned, is one of the major ones. Commercial could be a whole bunch of different things here, like product or so there's beauty, and beauty is part of the fashion world. If you're taking beauty pictures, maybe you're doing brand work for a client that is looking to do like their websites, or maybe they're trying to get like close-up shots of detailed products up, similar to weddings where you need to capture the finer details. So yeah, I think in fashion, you also have studio photography, and studio photography is a lot to get into because there's different styles of studio photography that you could do. There's creative portraits that people love to do. So there's different types of genres in fashion. There's also a runway production. That's where I lean more towards is the runway side and the producing side of production, and getting into like the backstage of a fashion show. So yeah, I think those are some different genres that I could think of. There's also lifestyle shots that a lot of people do. I have tried some lifestyle genres before. I mean, you really have to find like what niche of fashion you want to be in. I just happen to go into the fashion side of the designer side of working with designers because it's just something I love to do, and I'm passionate about that.
Thank you. That's helpful. Just uh, when I think about fashion photography, and I have to plead some ignorance, it's not been my main focus. So I don't know all of these different types of fashion photography. And so it's really helpful. And now that you name all those, I've heard of them. And I'm looking forward myself to learning more about all of these as we talk. So for someone who maybe has a camera, maybe just got it or has had it sitting around, hasn't used it a lot, but they're feeling inspired to try fashion photography, what are a few crucial first steps that you would suggest they take towards becoming a fashion photographer?
Mentor. I think mentorship is so wonderful. And also joining meetups in your area. I think you and I met at a local meetup here 5 years ago, I think. I'm trying to remember. I believe it was 5 years ago, roughly. And I think meetups are wonderful, great way to build your portfolio, especially if you're trying to get into fashion and then learning your camera, right? So understanding what your camera does, what type of brand you might have, because not all cameras are the same, or they might not shoot all the same. Because there are people that might be on film cameras, or you might be on DSLR, you might be on mirrorless cameras. So understanding really how your camera works before you start getting into production, or maybe you just want to go at it because I've talked to other photographers who are like, I just want to try it. And but finding that mentor, I think mentorship is huge, and I wish I had a mentor when I first started.
You're right. We did first meet at a meetup, and that was a really great experience for me when I started going to meetups to meet other photographers locally, meet some models, and then I was able to work with some of those models again after that. Can you say maybe a little bit more about meetups? Like, how would you even find out about a meetup in your city? And if there aren't any meetups, could someone just create one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way you could find out is either on Facebook, which is where I find a lot of groups that there's they're always constantly making one. The funny thing is that from Las Vegas reached out to me recently to come be a part of their camera meetup, and they have monthly themes that they do, which is great, especially right now in winter. Well, winter for us, summer there still. So where we can't really go out and shoot much in the you can go out and shoot, but in the winter for some really fun photos, not that it's not possible, but yeah, I think anywhere, wherever you live, Eventbrite's another great place to go and look for different events. I think Instagram, that's another great place to look for meetups. There's all different types of creators always making different events. And if you can't make it to one, or if there's not one near you, start your own. I think starting your own is really great because it also helps you learn on the go. And that's what I love about doing some of the model meetups. And I've gotten to learn from other photographers who might be learning, or maybe they're more experienced than I am, but it's always nice to brainstorm ideas, get fresh creativity, and I think that's what the meetups foster, and it brings friendship. I'm glad that you and I have been able to work together, and you took some of my most fun photos that I use a lot for a lot of my promo stuff.
Yeah, I think that's all great advice. And if you're in any city, really, there are photography or studios or studios that are used for photography, video, etc., that you can rent by the hour. And just putting out a feeler on, like Jolanta said, on Facebook or Instagram, you'll pretty quickly get interest, almost certainly from other photographers and models to just get together. And it's not a paid thing unless you want to charge a small amount to each person to cover the cost of renting the studio. And then you have professional equipment as well. So even if you don't have your own lighting equipment and so forth, you can use usually equipment in a studio and get really, really good shots and build those relationships, like Jolanta said.
Yeah, one thing about
So
oh, sorry, go ahead. I was gonna mention one thing about the studio. What's nice about being able to come to a local spot like the one you just came to, Toast Studios in St. Paul. It's great because it's central to people and it gives people a sense of community building. So I think that too is important. So being able to get to meet like-minded locals and being able to talk to people and network, not just work together, but really networking. Because I think that's really key too to being successful.
definitely. So I was going to ask you about, like, for somebody who's just starting and has no models that they work with, no professional team, no people that they can work with together, like, how can you build a compelling fashion portfolio from scratch? And I think we started to answer that by, you can organize a meetup or go to a meetup and meet people and start to get some material for your portfolio. Anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, so for me, I actually had a home photo studio. I know it sounds wild, but post-pandemic, I had a home studio that allowed me to build my portfolio. And a lot of people at first they were kind of like, "Oh, a home," you know? It didn't it wasn't as a home photo studio wasn't as popular back then when I first started. I got the idea from another photographer. Her name is Sue Bryce that I follow. You might be familiar with Sue Bryce and who she is, but I follow a lot of her work during the post-pandemic, and that inspired me to want to keep building. I've actually had like group shoots in my home, and for different portfolio stuff. I had an agency reach out to me and they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to work with you to do a photo shoot." And I was like, "Okay, how am I going to do this in my house? How are we going to fit 15 people in my home plus hair and makeup. So, tradition it was so funny because I didn't have a hair and makeup team or anything prior to I had to build it myself. So building it I had to build it alone first and understand the failures of what worked for me, what didn't work for me. I didn't always have a hair and makeup artist to work with. I had to learn how to do hair and makeup by myself. I also had my own kit for when I didn't have someone that was available, or how was I going to shoot today? Because with my lenses, I was still building up my lenses as well as with my camera tools and things like that. And so I think trying and fail, that's kind of the real key to getting far. And I feel like if you know what you're comfortable with and what pathway that you're going to choose, because there really wasn't any pathway for me to get here. I really just chose a lane, and I just stuck with this lane because it felt right. That's what I think part of trying and failing in this industry um, really works. And when you find out what you like, whether it be editorial, whether it just be straight runway, whether it be magazine shoots, whether it be hair and makeup, because everybody works together, right? So it's all like this big pod, as I like to call it. So, you know, you try your best to get along with people. And I think the business that you and I are in, we're in the business of people and understanding people.
That's all super helpful. And for me, I didn't start with, and like I said, fashion photography is not my specialty. So coming from things that I tend to do photography more of, whether it's street photography or taking pictures of bands playing at concerts, things like that, I don't have to worry about like a stylist or a hair and makeup artist or any of that kind of stuff. So the first time I went to a meetup that had a makeup artist there, I was like, oh, yeah, that actually makes sense because these are sort of fashion photos and everyone wants to look their best. And um, like you showed up have sometimes like with an entourage, like you said, with a makeup artist that you've built a relationship with. And like, how did you find makeup artists and stylists for your first shoots?
Great question. I think just through Facebook. Honestly, going through the meetups when you build relationships with people, and I think the meetups are great for that reason because they get to know you, people get to know you as well. They know you for your work. And I've also dabbled before I got into fashion, I dabbled in other things too, like real estate photography. I also tried doing some street photography and wedding portraits, and it's the same in weddings. You need to have a planner and working with a planner, and they have their whole team, production people through hair and makeup. They hire the people that they'll most likely work with over and over because you have a good rapport. And if you don't have a good rapport with people, then it makes it if you're an introvert in the industry, it makes it really hard to build those relationships for you. I mean, introvert, extrovert, if you're ambivert or whatever you are, you still have to work with people. So I think that collaboration, going to these meetups and depending on whatever you want to do, that helps you get to connecting with other like-minded people that will help you along the way and also building that trust because you have to build trust with people.
Yeah, you make a good point because I know speaking for myself, and I've talked to other photographers who are like this too, is I've always been kind of introverted, and that's part of what led me to be behind the camera, I think, instead of in front of the camera, hamming it up for the camera. And so I think that's kind of common, but you do have to come out of your shell at least enough to build those relationships, and then it makes it easier to come out of your shell and be more social from there.
Exactly.
Um, and and maybe that gets into the next question I was going to ask, which is what does a healthy collaborative relationship look like between a photographer and a model? And you could also address some of the other roles too that we're talking about, hair and makeup artists, etc. Especially when you're just first starting out. Like if you're starting out as photography, you've never worked with models before. What's a healthy collaborative relationship look like?
I would say don't be sketchy. Um, I know in the world of, and I say this with heart because in the world of social media, everybody screenshots everything and they take what you say with a grain of salt. So, and I've seen a lot of things happen with people's careers, and so I try to do my best to stay on the right side of things And what I do with collaborating with other models is either I'm referred to a model, referrals always help, and referrals, you can work through an agency. I worked with a lot of the local agencies in town. I worked with some of their models in town. So someone who can refer your line of work that can help you. Because I think referrals are huge and we kind of forget that. And so I think being courteous and kind when you're talking to the model and asking, "Hi, how can I help you today?" Or what type of concepts? What is a concept you would love to try? And I think just being that kind and open person and having a transparent communication and not hiding it. Because there's a lot of stories out there about people, and it's kind of crazy to me. The more you dive deeper into the world, I see things on, like, for example, on Threads. People, I don't know if you're on Threads at all, but I'm on
Mhm.
that app from time to time, and I'll just see random questions like, "Well, I worked with this photographer today, but I didn't feel safe." That's another thing. You want to make models feel safe, and also if they have people that want to come with them to photo shoots, allow it to happen. Don't be a gatekeeper because I enjoy when other people come on other shoots, and if you have a significant other, bring them. Why not? Why not bring them? Bring them with you. So I think those are some just cautionary items. Having open communication is huge with models, making sure that you're clear and to the point. Um, just be caution out there with social media. Let them know you've worked with other models. That's huge. If you work with other models that they know, that's also helpful.
Those are such good tips, and I think about my experience, like, as a guy doing photography, I see probably the same stories you're talking about online of and it's not just guys, but often it's men who use their not of course, most men don't do this, but men who use their, cameras to get with women they consider beautiful and then try to take advantage of them, and it's really, uh, totally inappropriate and unacceptable, and so especially for guys, but really for anyone who is new or just getting started out, building that trust with models is super important. And I would definitely second the suggestion to not only allow, but encourage models to bring someone with them. And you can get them involved with, oh, hey, can you hold this light stand or can you hold this reflector? And it's fun, and that'll be a green flag for anyone who, about like, okay, this is someone who it's safe to work with because I can bring my friend with me or I can bring my spouse with me or whatever. And also, another thing that maybe you didn't touch on is when you do photos of a model, I see a lot of models online get frustrated that photographers never get them their pictures or take like a super long time getting them their pictures. And you have to think as a photographer, it's like, well, I'm busy. I understand we're all busy. And this is, if you're just doing meetups or like work that's a TFP, which we can talk about what TFP is, where you're not doing it for money, neither of you are getting paid. You have your day job probably, and you have other things that you're doing to make money that should come first. Sure. But you should have the expectations clear, have communication. That's the most important thing. Like if you know it's going to take you more than a week to edit the photos and get copies of them to the model, let them know that up front so that they know what to expect. And if you have an unexpected delay, communicate with them. Communication is really the most important.
Exactly. And I think to add on to that, I understand life gets in the way. I've seen it where I've seen things from 3 to 6 months that models aren't getting back their pictures. And I think that you might be in the wrong business if you think that 3 to 6 months to wait for photos. I think that's a huge red flag, honestly. Probably the most I've probably waited for photos or to do pictures of any kind. I typically tell people at least a 1 to 2 week turnaround time frame. There's no way I can deliver you images in a day. Unless if photography is all that you do and you can have a quick turnaround time like that, awesome. But for some of us, like you said, some of us have 3 jobs that we're working. And on the model side too, you're also out there grinding and trying to get work and gigs and all these other things. So I think there should be to be fair, there should be some type of give and take between the two, have a mutual beneficial understanding because that's professionalism. Professionalism goes a long way because let's say that photographer goes on a runway show and you ask that photographer, I would love to come work on that show, just like what you were talking about when we were mentioning about bringing people. And sometimes models would love to ask questions about lighting. They want to know a little bit about photography. Maybe that piques their interest a little more by when you ask them if they have other questions about your process. So I think that helps too. These are great.
Yeah, you're right. And actually, I've met a number of models who are also photographers and vice versa. So you shouldn't assume that you're the expert and the model doesn't know anything about photography because often they know quite a bit, actually.
Exactly.
So let's skip to a different topic a little bit here, although I guess it's connected. Everything's connected. But let's talk about gear. If you want to do fashion photography, what would you say is the absolute essential camera and lens kit that you'd recommend for a beginner in fashion photography? And if someone's independently wealthy, sure, buy the most expensive stuff. But for the rest of us, maybe some suggestions that don't break the bank.
That's this question on TikTok, actually, to some of my TikTok followers, and it was amazing to some of the stuff that they came up with when it came to gear. They were talking about things from SD cards, which SD cards are essential to gear. Yeah, so what about your actual camera, like the types of lenses that you might need? So for me, I do shoot on my Sony A7 III, which I absolutely love. And when I got into this, I actually shot my first Sony camera was a Sony Nex, and that was the old Sony systems before Sony became this far in the Sony camera systems. So I think finding the right camera that works for you and the right equipment, you definitely want to have a long zoom lens. I think something between like a 70 to 200 millimeter with a really good focal point, like an f2.8. I'm talking like maybe a G Master lens, or if you're shooting on Canon, it's going to be the Canon L lens that they have, or maybe Nikon. I'm not sure what the Nikon equivalent is, but some sort of long zoom lens was really far away portraits because you're going to be maybe on the runway and you might be sitting in the press pit, which has happened to me several times. I'm sitting there and I'm sitting far back, but the model's all the way, the model's all the way there. And it really depends on the venue because my camera has really opened up like this repertoire, if you will, of being able to see the world a little bit in my lens, in using the lens as my bridge to see different things and different avenues that I could go down the fashion world. And I'll show you, I do love in studio. I'll use the 50 millimeter lens that I got here, the f1.8, and then I'll also use most of the time, depending on the venue, the 24 70. This is another great lens right here. I absolutely love this portrait lens. And then I do have there's something called the Trinity, the Prime Trinity lens, the 50, 35, and 80. Are you familiar with that term?
Sure, yeah.
Lens? So yeah, I love having prime lenses just because primes give you a little better crispiness in the picture as you go along.
And with primes, you can also get like the first one that you showed, the 50 millimeter one, you can get a 1.8 aperture, 1.4, even 1.2 aperture, which for zoom lenses, I don't know of any that open that wide. Yeah, so I think that maybe would be one thing I would agree with for gear. Whether you use Sony, Canon, Nikon, that's personal preference. Like you said, you should check out different people's opinions, try using them if you can, and pick whichever one feels better in your hands and you'd like, because all of them are going to be able to produce great photos. Lenses, in my opinion, is where you're going to spend more money, more likely, but it really does make a difference having a nicer lens. But but in reality, even almost any lens, any modern lens, or even using old film lenses with an adapter, you can produce amazing photos. So you want wide aperture, something that opens wide so that you can get uh, blurry background bokeh if you are doing that kind of a shoot. But if you're in studio, like when we did the recent event at Toast Studios that you organized, that was something where I was not shooting wide open at like the widest aperture I had. I was shooting at like 5.6 because I didn't want just the eye in sharp focus. I wanted everything in sharp focus.
Yep.
So I guess it really depends. And like you said, if you're doing a runway shoot, you want a longer lens, like 70 to 200, it sounds like, so that you can get pictures of people when they're farther away and coming towards you. Does that sound about right?
Absolutely. I like that you said when you open wide at 5.6 gives you that nice big, especially for the backdrops and stuff when you're in studio because you want it to look. And if you're working with jewelry, especially, you want to see the way that I've seen the jewelry like hang off like your finger or the way that you want to be able to feel it. And that sounds weird, but in the picture you want to be able to see, can I feel this piece of jewelry? Can I feel this piece of cloth? Like the details, can I see the little thread that might be hanging out there or in the bags that the designer has. So just understanding the different lenses. Now, I think Sony um might have a long zoom lens. It's like in the 135. I want to say it's an f2 point. I've used that lens. Love that lens if I can afford it. Well, you almost have to take out a second mortgage on these lenses. When you
Yeah.
understand when you start to understand the glass that you have, it makes so much sense for whatever you're shooting.
And I agree with what you're saying for studio shoots. I love like a 135 or a 70 to 200 lens too, because you have to step farther back. So if you're in a really small space, that might not work. But if you're in a large enough studio space, you can use a longer lens and you get that compression and it's great. So continuing on with questions about camera settings and lenses, like what are some of the key camera settings that you think a fashion photographer needs to master? I guess we're already talking about it, right? Like let's say you're doing a shoot in a studio, what would your typical starting setup be for aperture, shutter speed, and ISO for a studio shoot?
I think understanding your shutter, that might be the first place to kind of look because if someone is moving, like let's say I'm moving around in the photo, if you're moving around, you want to have your shutter high because if you don't have it above 100 and if you drop, it's going to look shaky. And I don't do blurred photos. And I know blurry photos is a trend out there for people. But I'm sorry, I can't do blurry photos. Understanding your movement and then the ISO, because you want to know, how high do you want your lighting to come in? Do you want to go above 200 or do you want to do, I think indoors, ideally, it is around that 500 to 800 range. And I know there are some people that are going to punch it up higher than the 200. I can't do that. I've tried it. I've gone as high as ISO. Don't ask me what I was doing. I was shooting a concert and I was indoors somewhere. And like, I don't know if this is gonna look pretty good on my Lightroom later. Let me
Yeah.
upload this in there. I'm like, I think my happy medium is between shutter of 100 and then the aperture to open it up. That sweet spot is the 5.6. I think the 5.6, maybe the 4, and then maybe dropping it down a little bit depending on what you're shooting gives you that nice, really clean image. And that goes for like outdoor situations if you're solo shooting by yourself and you just have a one light set up behind you for fashion shoots too. I did this in New York when I'm outside on the street and I'm like, I don't know what the building, trying to get all of that and the person in the building too. There's a lot going on in that photo.
Yeah. So a lot of this that we're talking about, I guess a big question is whether you have lighting like flash or off-camera flash or studio lighting while you're shooting or not, because that would greatly impact how you set your shutter speed, your aperture, your ISO. But I know for a lot of people just starting out, for me when I was just starting out too, lighting can be intimidating. And it's like, oh, I'll just do natural light because then I don't have to worry about all that complicated lighting stuff. Where do you think a beginner should start with lighting? Because especially for studio work with models and for fashion photography in general, lighting seems pretty important. So where should a beginner start? Is mastering natural light okay as a first step, or do you recommend that people dive right into off-camera flash?
You just said it. For me, it was natural lighting. I did a lot outside before I got into studio lighting, and then I got bored with outdoor lighting at some point, and I said, I want to challenge my brain, my creative brain, and think, like, okay, what else can I achieve? Because I think I was doing like meetups at the beach or whatever. Oh, we don't have beach. Well, we've got lakes. Well, you know what I'm talking. We have lakes here, rivers and stuff. But we can still call them
Yeah.
beaches, I think. Some and the outdoors, what's nice about it, especially like now in winter, you can use the clouds as big, reflection lights. You don't need a whole, and when you're outside, you can keep it simple. When you're indoors, I think that's where it gets a little tricky. And then you start adding on, we're living in like this attachment world now. Like, how do I attach a light pole onto my camera so I don't have to have the actual light stand? You probably see what I'm talking about on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Where
Yep.
see
Yep.
photographers attached. I think it's Profoto that might have. I don't know which or Westcott or whichever lighting brand has it, but I'm like, how do you do that? How do you? I don't know if I have the guts to like just hold everything, but I think we're living in a world of attachment. When you start attaching things into the hot shoe of your camera, that's where you experiment. That's where you figure out, okay, can I really do this with a different like? How creative can I punch it up? Or how crafty can I get if I'm squished in a corner in a venue somewhere and I have to be in a shoebox room for that's happened. Trust me, I've been in weird situations where I've had to crouch and I've had to be crushed. So um
Yeah.
you find yourself at odds with lighting. I think learning white balance. That's key. Understanding your white balance in your camera first off, that's gonna really help you. And I've seen how white balance has helped my work a lot, and I owe a lot to understanding the white balances and how to bounce off light. You're like a magician, kind of in a way. And
Yeah, I see people post photos in some of the beginner photography groups of like, why are my photos so yellow? I don't understand. I increased the brightness in Lightroom, it won't go away. And that's white balance. And
exactly,
if you if you've bought light bulbs, there are different types of light, warmer and colder light,
mhm,
cooler light, but then when it comes to photography, sometimes you just don't think about that, but it's the same thing and it can really
exactly.
alter your photo.
You
What
just made me think of something. In Lightroom, I don't know if you see, do you edit in I assume you edit in Lightroom?
I do,
Yes.
yeah. Yep,
In Adobe Lightroom Classic, when you go to the custom function, you'll see something called tungsten lighting, fluorescent lighting. That's your light bulb right there to understand
exactly.
the warmness of or coolness of how your photo is going to be.
Right. And if like you were talking about, if you're shooting indoors in not ideal light, most likely your photos are going to be really yellowish and sort of ugly looking until you adjust the white balance. And I guess just as a side note, it's really important to shoot in RAW as opposed to shooting JPEG
Yes.
so that you can have a lot more flexibility in adjusting the white balance afterwards in post when you're editing in Lightroom or whatever application you're using to edit, because you can actually adjust the white balance pretty easily afterwards. And so, like when I'm shooting if I'm in a studio, I'll set the white balance to where I want it. But if I'm at an event as the light is changing or it's getting darker, and instead of having to reset it every hour, I just put it on auto white balance and then I adjust them afterwards, and that works fine.
Here's another tip. If you're on the if you're shooting on the Godox systems or depending on whatever your lighting source is, make sure they're charged too, because when you
Mm,
have I actually had this happen once before, and I had an old Godox flash and I hadn't charged in about a year. Did you know it's did you know it still worked? Not enough, and I had it
okay,
in one whole year and it still worked to this day.
amazing.
Hear me out. Have backup batteries because those things when the off camera flash when they cycle, because remember there's cycle timing. So whenever you're syncing up the dials and the flashes, just remember that if you don't have a backup battery and one goes down, what do you have left? Just a tip of the
I
day.
know. I learned that the hard way too, especially doing weddings, to bring extras and backups of everything, extra memory cards, extra batteries, extra lenses, and extra cameras in case one of your cameras stops working, which does happen. And
Oh yeah.
uh, so yeah, that's very valuable lesson. So I'd like to get an example of a very simple but effective lighting setup for fashion photography. And I guess could you just describe the meetup the shoot we did recently at Toast Studios was a one light setup, and the photos came out so good. Could you describe what that setup looked like?
Yeah, so whatever lighting they have over at Toast Studios, which is, from my understanding, these are $6,000 lighting equipment that they've got over there. I do want to give them a shout out because these guys, they know their lighting, they know everything in that studio. If you ask them a question, they will sit down with you to customize whatever you want for the photo shoot. And man, oh man, I was talking to Alex, who is one of the owners over there, and Ron is also another owner. And they've assisted me so much with the style that I was going for this particular shoot. And this light setup, they had a big C stand, and C stands are really helpful for lighting equipment. And then the softbox was a beautiful. I want to. I think it's it's either a Pro Photo Light or Westcott lighting that they've got in. Don't quote me. I have to double check that on them. But that light, I just love the lighting setup that they have because you could go full power or you can go half power. If you have your spot metering, and for those who are just starting, understanding of spot metering is super helpful along with color correcting. Because once you get your color correction going, that is going to help you and also understanding your undertones and who you're shooting. Because there have been times where I've seen photos that just look like, is that really the person or is that something else? Or so you understand what I'm talking about, right? So
Right.
um
Yeah.
there's the lighting equipment, understanding that style of studio lighting equipment is phenomenal because it will change everything in your portfolio. You'll start to see like other things. So I just have to give a shout out to Toast for helping so much.
Yeah, and it was a great lighting setup and so simple. Like you can do a 4, 5, 8 light setup and get really complicated and do amazing stuff with that, and that's good to learn too eventually. But this was a setup with just one softbox, and it was huge. I didn't see what size it was. It was way bigger than anything I have,
Yeah,
and it was
same.
basically above and to the right of where the photographers were, to the left of the model, lighting the whole area where the model is. So the light fell just perfectly on the model. And it was just great. And to me, it showed you don't need 8 lights to get great fashion photos. You can do it with one good light. And whether it's Pro Photo, which is the higher end, or like you were talking about Godox, the sort of bargain brand, that's what I use for my flashes on camera, and as well as my off camera flash is Godox, and they're great, and they're way cheaper. So if you're going to have your own studio and have professional lighting, sure, get Pro Photo. But if you're just starting out, getting Godox or something like that is cheaper can get you great light. Light is light. You know, you'll get more consistency with Pro Photo and the professional ones. You'll never have the white balance off. It'll fire when you want it to fire every time. Godox might miss a shot once in a while, but as long as you're not doing a $100,000 photo shoot, you know, with uh, whoever, it's going to be great.
Find those clients, Brad.
Me too.
It's
Me
like
too. Yeah.
in a bottle. I wanted to talk. There's another lighting company that I used was Newer when I was building my studio. I use a ton of Newer lighting, especially on film sets too. I have a Newer setup that I use just because the LEDs that they've got, I think they've more so gone in LED lighting too. So even understanding the difference in strobe lighting, continuous lighting, understanding what type of light do you really need because like you were talking about a one light setup, and that's something I've played around with over the years is how much lighting do I actually really need? Can I simplify my lighting? Because I used to use reflectors. I still sometimes use reflectors. And I love the look of a reflector, especially if I'm outside or something. And if I don't have a need for flash for the day, I'll just go to a reflector. And if I'm by myself, I don't have an assistant or anything. Reflectors are great. Or I just use a one light setup with the Godox. I've got a nice big softbox, either the big ones that open up or small ones that are portable. They're making them smaller these days. So, it is Christmas almost. So I think it's on my Christmas list. So is it on do you have anything on your Christmas list, Brad?
A new laptop, I think, is what I need before any new camera stuff. Uh, I always have a long list of saved items in Amazon for, I don't buy everything on Amazon, but I save everything there that I want, all the camera gear, and I can refer to it. Yeah. It's a long list.
Same here. I have probably have a wish list. It's been getting less and less because what's nice about Toast, and I'll share this, is that from the time I've been shooting it, I've only been shooting there for a few months, and you don't walk in there without a camera. Actually, they'll have cameras for you if you want to rent one. They have some DSLRs, and I kind of forgot. This is kind of a old person moment as you're getting older. You're trying to remember, how do I remember all this stuff? I hate to admit that, but um,
It
uh,
happens to the best of us.
I was shooting on a Canon 6D. I was like, I shot with this camera for a long time, and now I've forgotten every single setting in here. So that's another thing.
Oh, man,
Understanding your menu settings on different systems, it can be tricky.
for sure. And that comes back to getting to know your camera well so that when you have a model in front of you, you're not wasting their time by spending a half hour figuring out your camera settings. So
Exactly.
that it is important. Yeah. So let's say you can't afford to have your own studio and you need to rent a studio space, like we're talking about this one in St. Paul. But for people in other cities, or if you want to try a different space, what are your tips for finding and using alternative or renting studio space? What are you looking for when you rent studio space?
This is a great question. I think for me is flexibility too. If I have clients or if I have models that are asking, or, people that want to book my time, how flexible is the studio? Is it accessible? We kind of forget about accessibility, actually, and accessibility is huge for me. What I like about here is that it's one floor. It's not multiple floors where other studios I've gone, they're either on the second floor or third floor, fourth floor. I've been in a variety of spaces, and energy too. I think finding the vibes, if you've got good vibes with people, finding a camera buddy, maybe. Like, I really appreciate either, you know, since you and I shoot in Sony and we can, exchange different lenses. If you're a photographer without gear, and maybe a camera shop that might be willing to something like a National Camera Exchange, or like a B&H that's in New York that has, or Adorama, I think it's Adorama, that might allow you to rent. Another great site is Lens Rental. I use Lens Rental a ton. Before I start saving for my lenses, I borrowed from Lens Rental, and they're pretty dirt cheap for a whole week. I think it's like $47 per day depending on the camera. And they also have, aside from lenses, they've got different camera bodies that you can rent from them. So I definitely sometimes will rent like a different camera system when I'm going out there for different fashion shoots. And if I have friends who are kind and willing to let me borrow some of their long zoom stuff because I know I can't afford it, which I truly appreciate you all, because I also have another friend who's another Sony shooter, and he's really graceful about letting me borrow. So, because I've loaned my stuff to other people too. It's just a matter of, will they come back in one piece? That's another
Right.
topic.
Yeah, and those are really important things for beginner photographers. When I first started out, I did the same as you. I rented lenses before plunking down the large amounts of money to buy them, and then if you're going to like it or not. And if you try something out, it seems good. All the YouTube videos about it make it sound amazing, but it doesn't work for you, then you've rented it, you don't buy it. So so for renting studio space, you're looking for a good connection, a good vibe. You want ideally somewhere that if you don't have all the equipment yourself, you need somewhere that has lighting that you can use. You need somewhere that has like the if you want sort of the white or a different color background, seamless background. A lot of studios have that something like that built in, or and other things you can use. So that's a good thing to look for if you're just starting out. And then for natural light, it's good to. A lot of studios have large windows that have great natural light as well, and so that's good to look for in a studio as well, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, price. If you're just starting out, price is probably important.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I was gonna say if you could find a community share where people there's a couple of spaces here in the cities, like, you go on Pear I think it's Pearspace. I wanna say it's Pearspace, where you can find people who are in, like, a community of photographers, and they're willing to, like, split the cost of renting a space. That's another great idea if you wanna mentor under someone or offer let's say maybe you could become like a do internships with other photographers and maybe they'll let you learn their own equipment. I know of other photographers who do that or other studios that allow for internship and maybe you can offer and say, well, I'll promote your studio to help you, to help me. And that's what I tend to do. I tend to offer the studios like, hey, you want some marketing? I'd be happy to help you grow or help you get new people new creatives because some owners they don't have time to promote themselves so and if that's a trait that you know you'll end up learning on your own as a photographer anyways how to market and promote yourself.
Yeah, great suggestion. So I wanted to ask also about the work that you do to promote and highlight Minnesota communities and highlight yeah Minnesota communities in your art and fashion work, and specifically if you could talk about some of the shows that you've organized like Mum and Me Productions that really did highlight Minnesota communities.
Sure, I would love to. So my mom and I, we started Mom and Me production about 2 years ago. This was an idea. We were sitting in Milan, and well, we traveled to Milan with my husband for work 1 year, and we were like, you know what? Why don't we try to bring our Trinidadian heritage into the mix of fashion and talk about carnival and bring in the steel pan portion for Mamma Mia production, which is what we're known for, the carnival couture. And I just thought we didn't have any Caribbean representation on the runway, and I was so tired of seeing. I was just so tired of seeing the same faces over and over wherever I go. Even when I went to New York, it was the same thing. I mean, you might find Caribbean models, but they never really you never see them get highlighted as much as we've given other Caribbean models an opportunity to really shine. And so, locally here, we did partner up with St. Paul Art Collective and the FOK Creative Studios, where I do a lot of my residency work in that building. And that's where you came to. And we were lucky and fortunate. I'm really blessed and fortunate for the connections that I have for this reason because we got a spot during the St. Paul Art Crawl to do our fashion show, and they've had fashion shows before, but not quite like this. So, we had two different designers, Corazon Clothing, as you saw, and then we also had my Shipai. I'm sorry, let me make that correction. And they were different designers, and that's what I love. And I wanted to give them an opportunity to showcase their work. There's streetwear, there's different types of flavors of designs, and it was fun. I loved organizing the whole thing. I'll do it again.
And it was fun for me to go as just a photographer who showed up that day too, and to see the different fashions and designers that some I was vaguely familiar with, but others that I wasn't, and see some of their work highlighting, like you said, Caribbean and Latino fashions in Minnesota. Um, yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, I think, you know, here in Minnesota, I feel we're really lucky with the river here on both sides of both Minneapolis and St. Paul. You have fashion all around, you have art all around, and I think art really plays a huge part in the work that I do, whether it be through photography, writing, speaking, or visual storytelling, right? And I've been just very fortunate and blessed, as I mentioned, and passionate about what I do and being able to keep continuing into the fashion industry because it's challenging. And I think that's what I like is the challenge that comes with it.
What are some considerations from lighting and makeup to hairstyling that photographers should know about when working with models to ensure that they're portrayed beautifully and accurately?
Yeah, well, I think definitely understanding how they all work together, that's an important thing. Especially with lighting because you're almost like a sculptor, right? Um, you have to be cautious of someone's posing, the face, where the light's gonna land, how they're gonna look in the final product, and also like understanding makeup and how makeup looks on that person's skin tone is very important. Over the years, I've seen makeup artists who don't know how to do dark complexions like mine or other models who have darker complexion, which is actually a common complaint that some hair and makeup artists just don't know how to do different skin tones. And they're slowly finally getting, to understand how it works. And it really depends on the hair and makeup artist you work with. So I think everything, if you can learn a little bit of what everybody kind of does, it'll help you be a more well-rounded, photographer in your field.
Absolutely. I think that's super important. So, why don't we start to wrap up and kind of do this last section of rapid fire questions and any final advice? So, you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Let's go.
All right. What is the most common creative or business mistake you see beginner fashion photographers make?
Mm, Not having some sort of online presence or some sort of portfolio to showcase your work.
What's one piece of advice you wish you had received on day one of your photography journey?
What piece of advice? I would say don't quit. If you are just starting out, keep working towards form your community. Whoever is in your community of people, just keep going. Don't quit on yourself. That's what I would give.
That's a good one. I think I heard someone say, I don't know if this was a scientific statistic or just anecdotal based on this photographer's lifetime of experiences, that she saw so many photographers. She had been doing it for 20 something years, and she saw so many photographers work really hard for 1 year, 2 years, or even 3 years. And they were just at the point where they were about to break through and they quit right before it happened. And so just don't quit. I love it.
I would say that.
And where,
Oh, sorry. Just to add on to that, you're not gonna see. I think we're all conditioned to see like this instant success right away. The thing about it is, it's going to take you maybe 5 years before you see maybe one client pays you whatever it is that you're going for. And I've seen this statistic where someone will quit at year 5, or someone will quit, like you said, before they see the success. And so you just have to really keep on building.
and where can our audience find you and your work online?
Yes, so you can find me. I'm at jolantayoungphotography.com. It's all one word. I'm also at Jolanta Young Photography on Instagram and Jolanta Young Photography on Facebook.
Well, thank you so much, Jolanta, for joining me today to talk about fashion photography. And I know I learned some things, and I think, or I hope, our viewers who are interested in getting into fashion photography will find this information helpful and inspiring and learn some things too. And thank you to everyone who's watching and listening with us today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow, like, and subscribe to get the picture on all the platforms: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. And if you can, consider supporting Get the Picture with a small monthly contribution on Patreon. It'll really help to improve the podcast and help us keep going. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. And remember to follow Get the Picture podcast online.